Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the June 10th, 2024 El Dorado Irrigation District Board meeting. May I have roll call, please?
Directors Osborne, Dwyer, Day, Veerkamp, and Anzini present. General Manager Abercrombie, General Counsel Polson, and Clerk to the Board Sullivan present.
Thank you. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
All right, we have a motion by Director Dwyer. Is it echoing? And a second by Director Osborne. Is there any public comment on the adoption of today's agenda? Not on individual items, we'll get to that, but on the adoption of today's agenda.
How in the hell do it?
If members of the public would like to address the board at any public comment period during this meeting, please refer to the detailed instructions on page 2 of today's agenda. This is for any public comment on the adoption of today's agenda, moved by Director Dwyer and seconded by Director Osborne. President Day, there does not appear any members of the public are wishing to speak on the adoption of the agenda. I believe we're ready for the vote.
All right, please vote.
Division 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, voting aye. Motion carries unanimously.
All right, Jim, do we have any employee recognition this morning?
Yes, I'd like to share with the board and the public that the district received a call from an EID customer who expressed his appreciation for DJ Traver, meter technician. He thanked DJ for the assistance during a recent interaction regarding a potential leak at his home. He shared the high praise that DJ was professional, polite, knowledgeable, and communicated effectively. It's just another example of excellent service to our customers. So very happy to get those.
That's always great to hear. Thank you. All right, is there any public comment on items not on today's agenda related to EID? Sir, state your name and what town you live in.
I'm William Harvey, live in El Dorado Hills.
Thank you.
I had a water leak also, and it may have been the same thing, I'm not sure. But I have information here. Hand that to the
What do you think?
Yes, sir.
copy for each of you.
I'll pass them down.
I'm about 70 years old, 75 years old now, and retired electronic engineer. And I've worked in my career, I've worked as a weather instrumentation engineer, a medical diagnostics engineer, and facility manager for a very large building that was on the HP site in Sacramento. Or in Roseville, I'm sorry. I had a leak in December that was, it started in December, and my December bill, or my, when was it? February bill, I guess, is when I got it, was about 3 times as much as what I expected. But no information to me saying that there was a problem there. 2 months later, the February-March bill arrived in April, and my bill was 12,000 cubic feet. Water, cubic feet per minute of water use, 12,000. That would cover my property about 7 inches deep entirely, including the house. There was a leak in the line from the meter to the house. Very close to the house, there was a copper.
Mr. Hardy,
PVC
could you
fitting.
get a little closer to the mic, please?
Would that help you?
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Sorry. Your tech came out, and again, a very good tech. He was there when I came out of the house, and he was looking at the problem. He made suggestions to me. We checked things out, and in about 15 minutes, we had found that the leak was between the meter and the house. About an hour later, I was able to turn the water back on in the house because I had hose spigots between the two places, and I was able to isolate the leaky line. So I stopped the leak in about an hour. Next day, I called out Conforti Plumbing and found the actual leak. I dug the holes and found the hole, found the leak, and then they came out, repaired it. Everything was done that day. Okay, so about 2 days, day and a half, 2 days after I found the leak, or I was notified of the leak, I was able to solve the problem. However, later that day, when I went to the post box and picked up mail, I found a document in there from EID saying, "We think you possibly have a leak." Kind of ironic, because it's been 3.5 months since, at least since that leak started. I'm going to get another bill this month because I wasn't notified before April. It's on the April bill now, so I'll be getting another bill for that leak before it's completely done. My bill for the second period, the second billing period, was about 1,500 times higher than my normal usage. 1,500 times higher. And what I talked to your service agent on the phone, and she said that manual reviews occur on the water bills when the water usage is greater than about 12,000 cubic feet per minute. But below that, they don't worry about it. They don't have time to do it. I don't know what it is. It really bothers me that with a computer system, this should be addressed in a matter of one billing cycle. There's no reason, in my mind, why it takes so long to get a bill or a notification to me that there's some kind of a leak. Now, I've had leaks before in my house, including this spot, believe it or not, and that's why I found it in about an hour. And that was many years ago, but it seems like nothing has changed over the past 10 years or 20 years. It's the same process where you wait to see this and you wait to see that, and it just takes forever. And basically, I appreciate your time. I'm gonna find a way to solve my own problem because right now, I'm opening your meter box every day, not every day, once a week, and I'm trying to determine whether or not that little red wheel is spinning. And if that little red wheel is spinning, I have a leak. Or I probably have a leak, depending on whether my wife's doing dishes or not at the moment. That's about what I want to say. I really think that this is hurting other people besides me. And I really would like to see something thought out and done to get this notification instead of 3 months or 4 months, get this notification back to us in 3 or 4 weeks at the most. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, and that's a good suggestion, and maybe we can look at the idea of being able to just send an email or email and letter to people, your usage is high this last billing period, rather than having to, it sounds like we have to manually review it. I don't know, that doesn't sound good. Could we take a look at that and bring this back as a how we handle this, and if there's a way for us to give them an electronic notification sooner of high water usage? I think that'd be good to look at.
Will do.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Do we have anybody online?
If members of the public would like to address the board for any items not appearing on today's
Figure
agenda,
out what the hell it is.
if members of the public would like to address the board for any items not appearing on today's agenda, please refer to the detailed instructions on page 2 of today's agenda. Does not appear any members of the public are wishing to speak. President Day.
All right, thank you. And thank you again. We'll move to communications. Jim?
Again, good morning. I'd just like to publicly share the note I sent to the board last week. We had a review by S&P Global Ratings of our financial picture, and it has confirmed that the district has a AA- rating on our senior debt and A+ rating on our subordinate pension bond obligation debt. I shared with the board some of the key factors that they identified in their report, which the board received a copy of. Some of those key factors are abundant water supply, multi-year rate increase authorization, very low Prop 218 protest rate, rebounded cash position following the Caldor fire, because we did expend a significant amount of cash to restore the flume system, and we recovered a good chunk of that. Robust debt service coverage, service rates that are affordable in relation to the poverty rate and income levels in the county, long tenured management team, sound management practices, and robust insurance policy coverage to mitigate risk. So I'm very pleased, not only for the district, but also for our customers, because that rating will help us in our bond issuance in August. Concludes my report.
All right, George, do you have anything?
Yes, I want to publicly thank Leslie Vaughn for the time that she spent with me. When we were doing some testing, we kept losing at the test for some, the target deal. And for some crazy reason, every time I would click on my computer, it would go away. So I think it was nut behind the wheel, probably. But anyway, she was very, very helpful, and I want to thank her personally. Thank you.
Yes, on Jim's report on the bond issue, our bond rating, I'd like to thank all of the directors that voted for the necessary increases that enabled us to have a favorable bond rating, which will decrease or lessen the impact of debt service on future current and future customers. Also, this morning I came from the Taxpayers Association, had Rebecca Gao from the El Dorado County Water Agency as a guest speaker, and there were many questions from the audience about the relationship between the Water Agency and EID and the other purveyors. So it was a good discussion, I think enlightening to the people that were there. Thank you.
Yes, just a couple things. We had a LAFCO meeting on May 22nd. The next meeting is July 24th. At the May 22nd meeting, we reviewed and had a public hearing on the 24-25 work plan and budget, which was approved. And then we awarded a certificate of recognition to Erica Sanchez, and now she's returned back to us. So I guess we can rescind that certificate of recognition. No, we won't. But it's nice to have her back, actually. She tested the water somewhere and figured El Dorado County was a better place to be. So we're very happy and fortunate for that. This weekend is the El Dorado County Fair, culminating Sunday or Saturday with the auction, John M. Studebaker wheelbarrow races, and a whole bunch of other good activities. So come on out. The weather should be good.
Weather's looking good.
And enjoy, yeah. So thank you for that.
Lori?
Yes, I attended the Mountain County Water Resources Association meeting, which was supposed to happen down in Murphy's, but at the last minute, they had too many people coming down and the hotel couldn't find rooms for people. So it was canceled, and we adjourned and had a meeting Friday morning via Zoom. A lot of the discussions were regarding the legislative advocacy updates that Mountain County Water is also working in conjunction with Placer County Water, and EDWA is also part of that platform. But there are several Senate bills that we are still looking at getting support behind. And I know that we did it through Aqua, but Mountain County Waters is also spending a lot of time educating Mountain County Water Board members on the ability to do that. We had the benefit of having, being close to Sacramento and having experts who are part of Aqua, but some of the other Mountain County water agencies are small, and they have very small budgets for their board members to travel and/or to hire a lobbyist. So Mountain County Water is delivering, the agency is delivering a lot of platforms for all these small water agencies to use. And I'm glad that EID is part of that, so.
Thank you. George had one more.
Yeah, I forgot. Numerous people have thanked me for the bridges that we built across the inlet. A lot of people walk around Four Bay Reservoir for their exercise every morning. And numerous people have said, thank you for putting those bridges in that they don't have to walk all the way up to Four Bay Road. Anyway, thanks a bunch for the crew that put that together.
Thank you, Jennifer. Do you have anything?
Today, thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the consent calendar. Does anybody want anything pulled? Yes, Lori?
I would like to have items number 5 and 7, I believe, pulled.
Okay. So do I hear a motion to approve the consent calendar without items 5 and 7?
I'll move approval of those items with those 2 items pulled.
I'll second.
I have a second. Any board comment? Any public comment on those items on the consent calendar?
If members of the public would like to address the board on today's consent calendar, please refer to the detailed instructions on page 2 of today's agenda. President Day, it does not appear any members of the public are wishing to speak on the approval of today's consent calendar minus items 5 and 7 approved by Anzini and seconded by Veerkamp. I believe we're ready for the vote of the approval of the consent calendar without items 5 and 7.
All right, please vote.
Division 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, voting aye. Motion carries unanimously.
All right, Lori, would you like to discuss 5 or 7 first?
I would like to, a couple of questions I have. let me put that on. A couple questions regarding the hiring of a group of people to look at our current bonding or for future bonding. And my biggest concern on this is, and maybe the staff can answer this question most for me. When we did the previous bonding, do you call them senior bonds? Okay. When we did the previous bonding, and I was here, did we hire somebody to do this prior to that?
Yes, we did. The same two firms that are recommended for the contracts in this item were also assisted us
Okay.
on the.
So I just want to be clear that I wanted to make sure that we were doing, so many things happened since the last time we did the bonding, I mean, including a pandemic in the middle of it, because it's really concerning to me that we're hiring people to look at this, and perhaps what they do is, and I don't know if that was in the contract that you're recommending, that they also look at our previous bonding and seeing that that information doesn't overload our current situation.
Yeah, thank you for that, Director Anzini. The scope for the the financial advisors is to provide us advice on precisely what you just articulated. Do we have the debt capacity to take on additional debt in order to fund the projects that we want to, and so forth? And that's the kind of analysis that they provide us. So that is what the financial advisor does, is they look at prior debt, proposed debt, and so forth. And then the bond counsel, you might recall each time that we issue debt, there's a book about this fat. It's called the official statement, and it goes through and it provides all the relevant information to the bond market community. Our bond counsel is the one that writes that book, the official statement. And so effectively, that's what we're hiring them to do, is to write that, to provide us with advice on how to comply with securities law and so forth. And then there are ongoing disclosure requirements associated with that as well that they help us with.
So I guess one more question is, do they carry any liability if they do something wrong?
Yeah, all of our consultants are required to have, to be insured, including these. And for professional services, that also includes professional liability insurance. So yes, all of our consultants are, they by contract assume certain liabilities that we set forth, and they protect against those liabilities through our insurance requirements.
Okay, so my biggest concern, of course, is the obligation of the bonds and the debts. And we have a significant amount. We did some really good maneuvering the last time to reduce that and to get a better rate. I don't know if today's rates are going to be helpful for us. So I guess the question here is, we're hiring somebody to do this. When do we anticipate? I just need it out in the public. When do you anticipate bond funding?
August.
That's quick.
Well, we've been working on this for a while, and the addition I'd like to add to Brian is S&P reviewed our financials and the proposed bonding that we're going to do in August, and the subsequent one that we disclosed in 2027 for the El Dorado Hills treatment plant. And they reaffirmed our AA- rating with those disclosed to them.
I just wanted to make sure that it was out in public, because sometimes when you put things on the consent calendar, we don't get an opportunity to ask those questions. Thank you.
I'll move that we approve consent calendar item 5.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further board discussion or questions? All right, oops, sorry. Is there any public comment or question on item 5?
If members of the public would like to address the board on consent calendar item number 5, Option 1, moved by Director Dwyer and seconded by Director Veerkamp. Please refer to the instructions on page 2 of today's agenda. President Veerkamp, it does not appear any members of the
President
public.
Day.
You called him president.
Did I say
I know,
Veerkamp?
it's tough to get out of your mind, but
I mean,
I'm sorry. President Day. It does not appear any members of the public are wishing to speak. I believe we're ready for the vote.
all right, please vote.
Uh-oh.
Again?
Division 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, voting aye, motion carries unanimously.
All right, Lori, item 7.
Yeah, the curiosity of this whole thing for me is for the last 2.5 years, we've voted to extend our general manager's contract, and here we are again, extending a contract for another year. My feeling about this is that I think that extending this another year is going to take us down into an area of, well, I will say it very gently, of, well, with the election happening, that we're going to have possibility of 3 new board members. So my concerns with this is to make sure that our agency is balanced and ready for changes. Since I've been on the board for the last 5 years, I've been patient and hopefully working with other board members on the balance of our leadership. And Jim has been a great leader, but extending another contract for another year to me is too long. And I am going to suggest that we extend it up until October. And in October, we have interim and have an ability to, when the new board gets settled down, to move forward in recruiting for a new general manager. And that is my concern.
Would you like to make a motion?
Yes, I would like to make a motion to not support item B, or item A, but change that motion to extension of the general manager's contract until September, get an interim general manager, and then the new board can start the process in January. That's my motion.
September what, exactly?
September 30th.
September 30th, and recruit a new general manager and get him on board prior
Get an
to-
interim on board,
Interim manager.
an interim manager on board until we find a new manager.
Permanent general manager.
Yes.
You want to read that back, Jennifer, or clarify it?
No, because I don't understand at all
Okay.
that we're going to have a general manager, and we're going to hire another general manager, and then we're going to hire a permanent manager.
Okay,
Excuse,
I think, let me
Okay.
clarify that we not approve this contract. I am suggesting a modification to it, that we extend the current general manager's contract until September 30th. During that time, an interim manager can be brought on.
After that time.
After that time, an interim manager can come through
But-
until we hire a person to recruit a new general manager for us.
I'm just trying to help clarify, because so, and correct me, you're making a motion, you're not suggesting.
I'm making a motion.
You're making a motion.
Yes.
so, Yes. To extend the general manager's contract through September 30th of 2024,
Right.
to then consider appointing
An interim
a
manager
manager, which could be in-house.
could be in-house. And then
And then
we
when
hire
when
an
would you
outside,
when would you want to start a search?
after the
or a
board has been set, the new board is set, and they will make that decision.
Okay, so that's December.
Yeah, December 15th or whatever.
So we need to have specific dates. Jennifer, is that helping any?
sure.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's my motion.
I'll second it for the point of the board discussion, because I think we need to talk about this. I have one question, though, because I might have an alternative suggestion. Can the board, and I'm looking at our general counsel, can the board meet and confer or negotiate, I guess, probably, could we negotiate with our general manager? Could we continue this item and then meet and negotiate with our general manager whether he's interested in this?
Yes, you could continue this item. Of course, it would require a majority vote of the board to continue it. And if the board was interested in negotiating with the general manager, it would have to appoint labor negotiators, and then would have to agendize, according to the Brown Act, meetings in order to facilitate. If there were a majority of the board that were participating in those negotiations, it would have to agendize the labor negotiation meetings with the general manager.
Are you interested in that, Jim?
I can't disclose what was discussed in closed session regarding my contract. However, please just recall that discussion before the board take action.
Okay, now I'll open it up to board comment, questions. Go ahead.
Director Day, were you making a motion to continue the
Not at
item?
this time. I made a second so we can talk about it.
Well, I can't divulge what we talked about at closed session, but I support this because I think we get a new general manager, and it's going to take a while to get a good new general manager to equal what Jim has done in the last few years. I think that he could ask the board to terminate his contract at any time after he feels comfortable with the new general manager. And it could be 6 months, it could be 8 months, whatever it is. But I think that Jim deserves the opportunity to make sure that he's comfortable with his replacement. And we all appreciate Jim's contribution to this organization. But I would like to take option 2, that the general manager can ask to terminate his contract at any time after January 1st.
I think you can do that already.
Well, but I mean, to make it official.
Well, it's part of the contract.
Okay.
It's part of the
Yeah, but
contract.
anyway, I strongly support this.
I think it's unclear what you're strongly supporting. Are you strongly supporting option 1, or are you strongly supporting?
I'll go back to option 1.
Okay.
Okay.
So to clarify, there is a motion on the DS.
Option 2.
And are you making another motion?
I'll retract that motion. Thank you.
Are you making a motion to move option 1?
Yes. Whatever it takes.
Alternative motion. Do I have a second for that?
I'll second.
Okay, let's continue. Pat, I know you had some things to say.
I just had, on the original motion, I had a question. On the original motion, I have, I guess, technical question for our HR. Jose, this sounds a little convoluted. And, the worst thing an organization can experience is turmoil at the leadership level. And so this idea of eliminating our current general manager in September, the end of September, doing some interim thing undefined at this point, and then selecting a new general manager after December, after new board is seated. I'd like number one question, are the time periods reasonable to go out in a search and find an interim and hire and do all those things? So
Interim, I'm just guessing, would be.
that's, I'm asking our expert. Thanks.
Sure. No, thank you. Jose Perez, Director of Human Resources. Appreciate the question. So Typically, an outside consultant would come in and do an external recruitment for a general manager replacement. Typically, that timeframe will vary. It will be a wide recruitment area, probably statewide, maybe even nationwide recruitment that gets the best candidates applying for the position. So that process takes time. It's going to take several months, even for an outside consultant to come in, start the process, provide the board with their recommendations, observations as far as the recruitment plan and the timeline and the cost, and they would have the board informed throughout that process. But from what I understand, it can take 4 to 6 months.
Yeah, unfortunately, I wasn't here for that closed session discussion. I'm all for getting Jim off to a good start and enjoying life, but circumstances are huge, and starting with 3 new board members and having to task them with a search for a permanent, even though you might find a good interim, I think rushes the whole process. I'd rather we could start that process at any time, and then Jim's guidance and so forth would be, I think, very instrumental in the continued success of this. So I think we're going down the right path. And again, we can push that process. And I certainly respect Lori's angst on something that we'd hope to have already occurring. But again, the thoughts that we had, I believe, going into this didn't get us there. So if we want to accelerate it, that's fine, but I don't think we rush completely and risk tasking 3 new board members. You want some continuity, and 3 new board members will be a whole new change as well. So I'm going to support option 1.
Okay. Yeah, I'm conflicted. I think I remember what we discussed, and I was very comfortable with it. On the other hand, I think I know where you're going, Laura, wanting to have a clean break and be able to have that, then a fresh start with a new board selecting a new general manager. And so I understand that too. I think there's probably some pros to that. And frankly, the new board could still do that. So I don't think we're tying their hand. We'd be tying their hands or anything because they can change things. So
We can still get that process going.
yeah, well, I mean, I think like as Jose said, it's going to take months.
Right.
So okay, yeah, go ahead. You had some more comments?
No.
No?
I have a motion on the floor.
Yes. Well, we have 2.
Actually, the motion on the floor is option 1. The initial motion was your motion, but then once Director Osborne made his motion, that's, General Counsel Polson, can you please just review how the substitute motions and how that process works, please? Thank you.
Yeah, there are 2 motions. The motion pending before the body at this point in time is option 1. That was the substitute motion. If that motion fails, then the board would pick up the original motion, the original main motion, which was option 2, with some additional details offered by Director Anzini. Does that answer the question?
Is Brown, under the rules of the Brown Act?
Well, this is
yeah.
internal,
These are Robert's Rules of Order.
right?
So
Yeah.
No, they're Polson's rules of order.
newly revised 12th edition.
There you go.
I want to be clear, even though we had tongue-in-cheek comments, this is Robert's Rules of Order, not General Counsel Polson.
No, and we've adopted Robert's rules, so, okay. Is there any public comment or question on either of the motions?
If members of the public would like to address the board on consent calendar item number 7, either motion, Please refer to the detailed instructions on page 2 of today's agenda. President Day, it does not appear that there's any members of the public wishing to speak. I believe we're ready for the vote
All right,
on the motion on the floor, which is option 1, moved by Director Osborne and seconded by Director Dwyer.
Correct. Please vote on option 1, yea or nay.
Division 1, 2, 3, and 5 voting aye. Division 4 voting no. Motion carries.
All right, and because that motion carries, then we do not vote on the original motion.
That's correct.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Lori. Now we're done with the consent items. We will move to information item number 10.
I'll try my best.
Lean into that mic.
Thank you very much.
I think we need a slightly longer, more adaptable
I'll
mic.
just slouch a little bit. Good morning, Jordan Baxter, hydrologist for the district. Today I'll be talking about a little update on our water supply situation. Got a presentation for us. Here it is. All right, so yes, so this is a picture of Lake Aloha. This was taken May 16th. We took a helicopter flight in just to check instrumentation and then also make a flow adjustment. You can't really see Lake Aloha because it was still frozen over. You can see little bits of blue. On the far left, I don't know if you can point with the cursor there, Jennifer, but that is the main dam just below where the cursor is. So that was built in 1917. That, along with some saddle dams, impounded water of what was then called the Medley Lakes. So now there's 5,000 acre feet of usable storage up there. But pretty cool. That rock was all quarried on site, and it's just a beautiful dam. Next slide. All right, so trying to be as brief as possible. I'm trying to get better and better at it. But this year, plenty of snow, not as much as last year. Any questions? I'm not that brief yet, so I do have some more. But eventually we'll get to 2 slides. Try to beat Dan's times is my goal. Okay, so summary of what we'll be talking about today. In general, we really experienced kind of strangely near average both winter and spring precipitation. The water supply picture is looking unconstrained for 2024. All reservoirs have already reached the full point, 100% full, or are projected to be full by the end of the month. And then overall, the district is well positioned to meet 2024 demand, but also preparing for a potentially dry 2025. Next slide. All right, so just a little talk about the prevailing weather patterns. As I said, so the precipitation and looking at peak snowpacks, that's usually around April 1st. We're very close to the historic average. So looking back 20, 30 years, you have some really wet years, some really dry years, but in general, really close to that 100% mark, both on precip and the snow measured in the high country. So one metric that the EID uses and also informs is the Department of Water Resources Bulletin 120. So this forecasts natural flow in many rivers, one of them being the American River natural flow into Folsom Reservoir. So we provide data based on our snow courses to DWR. In February, they came out and said that we were 79% of normal, so that put us in the below normal category. Again, around early March, they came out. This time, there was a little bit more precip. It bumped up to above normal, so 103%. That above normal continued into April, and then May, I think it came out May 8th or 9th. The final Bulletin 120 came out. We got bumped down a little bit to 98%, so what that means is below normal. So we will be, Project 184 will operate both stream flow requirements and lake level targets to that May Bulletin 120 of below normal. And that will hold true until February of 2025 when the next round of Bulletin 120s are released. Next slide. All right, so we've looked at this before in previous board meetings, but what this is looking at is sea surface temperature anomalies off in the Pacific. This informs what's referred to as the El Nino Southern Oscillation. So there's A line in the middle that's a little bit darker horizontally, that would be no anomalies, so just normal sea surface temperatures. Anything above is warmer. That usually coincides with El Nino, or it coincides with El Nino, which not always, but typically is warmer and wetter. And then below that line would be colder and drier. So right now we're in an El Nino. It's becoming more neutral. You can see the models as we go into time, into the fall. Everything's kind of falling down into La Nina. So just something that district tracks, not necessarily a black and white thing, but something that we track. Yeah.
Question regarding the La Nina versus El Nino. So you're saying the zero black line in the middle drops you into which one? Which Nino?
So El Nino is above the line.
Okay,
La
there you
Nina
go.
below. So,
All right.
and then anytime it's pretty close to that line, they refer to it as neutral.
Okay.
So
All right, thank you.
trending towards La Nina is the takeaway from this graphic.
That's what I hear from the weather people.
That's the people I listen to as well.
Okay.
Next slide, please. All right, so kind of in our local watershed, so we've talked about this before in previous board meetings, but the district measures at 3 different snow courses. One at Upper Carson Pass, so just near kind of the crest as you would drop into Hope Valley, and then one a little bit lower, Lower Carson Pass, and then Caples Lake, which is down at the elevation of Caples Lake itself. So what we're looking at here is an average of those 3 snow courses measured 5 times throughout the winter. So January through May. The orange trace, that is the historic average. The blue is what we measured in 2024. So January, February, kind of off to a slow start. Not a lot of snow up there. And then March started to close the gap a little bit. And then April, we actually went above that 100% mark. So we were feeling pretty optimistic about the water supply picture. But then we measured in May, and all of a sudden, a lot of that snow kind of disappeared. And that was true throughout the watershed. Those lower elevations melted out pretty quick. Some different reasons for this, but in general, what I observed is locations that were in or adjacent to the Caldor Fire burn scar, there was a lot more black carbon from those trees still letting off. The albedo was affected by that, which therefore made that snow melt quicker. So hopefully in the coming years, that becomes less and less of an impact. But in general, we did see earlier melt, especially at the lower elevations. Next slide. All right, so coming down the hill to Folsom Lake, what we've done here is plotted the last 5 years of the storage curve at Folsom Lake. This year is in dark blue, so we're just about 945,000 acre feet. So pretty close to full. I believe that's 97 or 8% full. It's flattening out. I wouldn't be surprised in the next week if that normal drawdown begins to occur. One thing to note is you can see a little red blip just above it. That was 5 years ago. So the last time Folsom was this full was 5 years ago. And I know there's trails on both the North Fork and South Fork that are underwater right now. So just some impacts for recreation around the lake, but overall we'll allow for a great recreation season down in Folsom and a good water supply for us as a district.
I'm going to drive you crazy today.
Quite all right.
I'm looking at the one that was in our board packet, and it doesn't look like the same image.
That was
There's
my
like there's this red line that's going, a purple line is going on there, and there's nothing here.
That was my first note and I forgot, so I appreciate you reminding me. So since the issuance of the board packet, I have
Okay.
updated a handful of these slides, both to be more in line with today's conditions. Things have changed pretty drastically in the last couple weeks.
Sure.
And then also this slide in particular, I changed which traces were added to it, just because I thought it was a little more interesting to look at the last 5 years versus looking at other similar water year types.
Yeah, yours says 944,000 acre feet, and I have 942,000, so.
So yeah, it's gone up
obviously.
2,000 acre feet since the issuance of the board packet.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that catch, because I forgot to disclose that. Next slide. All right, so just a little more conversation around Folsom Reservoir. So the Bureau of Reclamation announced the 2024 water supply allocations for the Central Valley Project. So for M&I contractors such as EID that are north of the Delta, we will receive 100% of our allocation. And then currently, Folsom Reservoir is sitting at 944,560 acre feet. That is 120% of the historic June 10th date. So what that means for the district, we anticipate relying on a combination of our pre-1914 ditch rights that we can pick up in Folsom, in addition to contractual CVP supplies to meet our El Dorado Hills demand. Next slide. Okay, so then just looking at reservoir storage at a glance, we'll start upcountry. So Caples Lake, our largest storage reservoir in the high country, 97% and filling still. Silver Lake and Echo Lake have both already filled and are in a spilling status. Lake Aloha at 88% and still filling. And then Jenkinson and Weber. So both these filled pretty early this year. I was at Jenkinson last Wednesday, I believe. Yeah, it was Wednesday. And water was still lapping over the spillway. So at this stage, my guess is it would take a pretty good boat wake to get it to go over. But in general, it's pretty darn full. But Reservoir A demand is outpacing what we're diverting through Camp Peak Tunnel and the local inflow. And so we can expect that drawdown to steadily begin. And then Weber, kind of a similar story, was spilling. It's currently not spilling. Evaporation and our downstream flow requirement are outpacing the inflow.
Would you hazard a guess of where do you think Jenkinson Lake would end up this year?
It's a great question. This isn't as interesting, but the next one I'll have a graphic trying to do just that. So in terms of reservoir management, Project 184 reservoirs are full or currently filling. So as we said, Echo and Silver, they are full. Caples and Aloha, they're forecasted to be 100% full by the end of June with the caveat. So our lake level requirements, they need to be full or very close to full by the end of June. However, we cannot spill at either of those reservoirs. So it's a balancing act of get it as full as possible while mitigating the risk of spilling. And then to President's point, so Jenkinson Lake, our carryover storage for December 31st is forecasted to be about 28,500 acre feet, about 70% full. And then the next slide, we can see that a little more graphically. So we'll try to unpack this one. So this is just below normal year. So we are in a below normal year, so trying to compare apples to apples where we can. We pulled in 2016 data, which was below normal, and 2018 data below normal. So 2016 is in purple, 2018 in green, and then the red is this year. So you can see at the end of May, we were full, similar to those other years, and then that drawdown process begins. To be conservative, I use 2018 as guidance. There's been a lot of similarities between this year and 2018 in a lot of respects, so I think that's the best guidance we have. But you can see that target carryover storage of 25,000 acre feet. Even if we were to have a water transfer this year, we're forecasting that we're well above that 25,000 acre foot target carryover storage, closer to 28,500. Does that answer your question? Okay. Next slide, please.
Just a comment, I keep track of rainfall on my back deck in Camino, mainly because of my old job of being a fire guy. But normally I have 40 inches, and this year I had 41.2. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's kind of fun to keep your own rain gauge. I do the same thing, and yeah, just makes you feel part of it. Okay, so this graphic was introduced, I believe it was the March 11th board meeting. I just wanted to revisit it. So at that time, we had 2011 circled as well in purple. So what this graphic is the story it's trying to tell is basically the demand at each of our water treatment plants. So that is shown in the stacked bar charts. So blue being Reservoir A, orange El Dorado Hills water treatment plant, and then gray Reservoir 1. So stack those all together, that's the district-wide demand. And then the red trace, which is tied to the secondary y-axis on the right, that's September 30th storage in Jenkinson. So because we're in that below normal and it's more similar, I think this chart can give us good guidance of what we can expect the rest of the year in terms of both demand and where we think Jenkinson can be. So 2018, you see it's close to 34,000. And then that red trace, it's in 2018 specifically, I think September 30th was close to 31 or 32,000 acre feet, and then further drawdown into the December months. So yeah, I just wanted to bring that graphic back and present it to you. Next slide. All right, so just a little review on demand trends. So customer demand is characteristic of those below normal years. Looking at the last 4 years, so comparing this year to the 4 preceding years, the January through May demand, so from January 1 through today, the demand's about 12% less than if you were to average those. I think it's worth noting, though, that 2021 was pretty unprecedented high demand, so that does skew that statistic a little bit, but in general, we're running a little bit below where we were in those previous years. But that demand curve is very similar to 2018, as we'll see in the next 2 slides.
Before you go forward, can you
Yeah.
back up a couple to the treatment plants?
I think it's one more. there
Just
you
an observation. Oop,
go. One more.
too
forward.
far. There we go.
Yep, perfect.
It just shows that Res A and Jenkinson Lake is really the workhorse for our water system. And I guess I'll make a plug for the upcoming item, that it's imperative that we be able to use that water storage and transfer it to treatment plant 1 so we can distribute it down slope.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I created this figure for a conversation with Patrick Wilson, our drinking water manager, and that was one of the things that stuck out to us the most is, hey, I mean, look how intertwined or how important and pivotal Reservoir A is in the water out of there.
Thank you.
Yeah, good question or comment, thank you. Yeah. Okay, so 2 figures just to kind of show in a picture what was in the previous slide. So this is looking at the last 5 years, red being this year so far. So compared to the last 5 years, we're kind of on the lower end of the bookends there. But if we go, so this is monthly demand district-wide. We go to the next slide. Now we're comparing more apples to apples of what the hydrology was like. So the red trace again is this year, 2016 in purple, and then 2018 in green. You can see month by month, it's pretty darn similar to 2018, and why I've kind of leaned on 2018 as guidance as to where we could be going for the rest of the summer and into the fall. Next slide, please. All right, so lastly, customer engagement. So overall, in terms of what the district's been doing for customer engagement, continue to encourage customers to stay informed and involved in water efficiency efforts. This could include complimentary water surveys or information on rebates and incentives for water efficient appliances and fixtures, really with the overarching goal of supporting our customers to adopt practices that contribute to the long-term sustainability of all of our water supply. All right, and I'll end with a photo that our assistant hydrographer, Nick Paget, took up at Caples Lake. So this was taken, I think it was May 24th, if my memory serves me right. But you can see, this is on the, so the outlet works is on the far right. And the water has risen in the last 2 weeks, 6 feet, the equivalent of about 16% of the entire capacity. So there's been pretty drastic inflow, and staff has had to kind of slow that rate of increase just to make sure that we don't spill. But that landscape is ever changing day to day, and the lake is a lot fuller than that photo is here.
The most important thing is, has fishing game stocked Caples Lake?
I would ask Gino, but he's since retired and probably fishing it, so he'd still be the right person to ask. But with that, any questions? Although I love to talk fishing, so if there's fishing questions, I'm happy to take those.
All right, thank you. Is there any public, oh, go ahead, Lori.
Yeah, I just, I want to go back to slide 16. And just to make sure that our customer engagement is well done. I know Jesse does really good articles on Nextdoor and the posting on Facebook, which makes it very easy to share. There's a great deal of population down south, in El Dorado Hills and that area, who always have questions, and they're usually on the social media. it is a good tool to use, and I just want to make sure that we continue that and focus on that, because it's really important for them to understand that staff in this agency is being very, very conservative about the water issues, but also thinking about them. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there any public comment or question on information item 10?
If members of the public would like to address the board on information item 10, please refer to the detailed instructions on page 2 of today's agenda. President Day, it does not appear there are any members of the public wishing to speak on information item number 10.
All right, thank you. Good job.
Thank you for your time.
And now we'll move to information item 11.
Good morning, Board. Aaron Kennedy, IT Director. I'm going to be talking to you and giving you an update on the Hanson upgrade project. So the first slide, or the second slide, please. Sure. All right, so we do have talking about the previous board action. I'm not going to read all of these. I just want to call out that first one on this page, which was December 9th, 2019. The board awarded a contract to Weston Technology, now called Raftellus, to begin this project. So reality is, while staff has worked on it before then, officially this project actually started back in 2019. So just kind of giving a quick time frame for this, if we can go to the next slide. And then the last board action was on October 10th, 2023, where I came before the board talking about where we had to do an extension and had to ask for a little bit more money. Want to say thank you very much for your support on that. That was very helpful in getting the staff to be able to focus on the project or the portion of the phase that was ongoing right there. We were able to move off the CDR phase. We'll get to the definitions in a moment. And that really gave staff the ability to concentrate, get us over the finish line on that phase that we're working on, and now working on the next one. If we can go to the next slide, thank you. And then for the board's and public's benefit, I wanted to define what the phases were. So we had the first phase, which was foundation, and that was planning and documentation, CMMS, so not difficult to say at all. Computerized maintenance and management system that is used by our field staff for the work orders. That's what they do to keep track of everything that's going on in the field and the piping and the pumps and such. We have our CIS, which is the customer information system, or for the public, that's the billing and payments. CDR is the community development and regulation, and so that's for our development services. That's for permitting and looking at new development. Next phase, thank you. So quick summary, the Hanson Core Software Project team has completed the CIS phase. We have gone live. We were live Monday, April 22nd, and as of today, we've encountered no significant issues and fully processed 5 of the 8 billing cycles. We do have 3 more, largest of which is actually going on this week. We have had a couple of minor issues. Those were kind of expected. Whenever we do a transition, there's always something that, as large as this, you'll find no major issues or significant. We have a couple of minor, a couple of moderate, but the team has addressed them very rapidly, got those cleaned up, and really no true billing issues with anybody. Work is ongoing in the final phase, which is the CDR, Community Development Records and Regulation. We are currently targeting November 2024 for that module's go live. That does not mean the project will be done in November. That means we'll be live. We do have some after go live actions, just like we're doing now with the CIS, We make sure everything's operational, look for anything that you might have missed and clean it up. So realistically, it'll be January or February before we come to the board with the project is completed and here's all the status on that. And then just as a brief note, the project is currently on schedule and within the budget as we presented and was approved by the board on October 10th. Again, thank you very much for your support on that. That was very helpful in getting done. Next one. So originally, the project was scheduled to last about 2.5 years, to start in March of 2021 and continue through October 2023. We didn't make that, but we did get a lot of the work done and such. If we can go to the next slide. What did happen is we did get the foundation phase. It did not actually start till May 21. So immediately right off the bat, we were about 2 months behind. That just has to do with how long it takes to between contract sign and actually being able to mobilize staff to get people moving. But they did get that one done around the time that we had expected to take. The CMMS phase took longer than expected, and the CIS phase, and we went into the details on the last one, what that happened. But I went on it to note is that in October, we did effectively pause work on the CDR, which allowed the staff that was working 2 phases simultaneously to concentrate on CIS. Immense amount of work was able to get completed by doing that. And we got finished when we expected to, which was first of this year, with, again, and the big piece, during billing, no impact to customers, and things actually went really, really well in the go live. We were expecting to have to be ready to go and fix anything, and that portion of it was incredibly good, and I want to make sure we call out the staff who did an incredibly detailed work on making sure that that was operational for our customers. And then, like I said, we had started CDR, and we are in progress targeting for November for go live. That doesn't have as much direct impact to customers, but it still does impact all of our development customers. So that transition should not be as difficult or as impactful if anything were to go a little delay on that. Although we don't expect any, we're actually hoping to go a little early. If we can go to the last one, just to call out on CMMS and CIS, both of those have helped us get more accurate and complete management records. The old system was working, but did have a few not issues, but deficiencies as times move forward. That was an older system. We've now improved some of that. We've gotten a lot more efficiency. And one of the big pieces on the CIS, the customer service reps, the tool that they use now actually takes fewer steps to get the information. So when customers call in, they are now faster at it. They have noticed, the customer service reps noticed when they went live, it's like, this used to take me 4 or 5 minutes to get the information for someone. Now I can get it in about 30 seconds to a minute. So instead of saying, please hold while I get this, they go, yes, I'm gonna get it right now. And okay, here's your data and here's what's going on. So immediately we've already seen that. And then we do expect as we continue using that to be able to add more efficiencies, and we're looking to do a few more pieces of it that will be more public facing, and we'll show those when they're ready to go live. And then really, we just want to recognize the staff. So this right here is the core team that has been working on it, with the exception of the person in the purple. I just kind of make sure it's there. The rest of the team's actually been working on it really, really well, and that is both our internal staff and several members of our consulting team mixed in there. This was the week after we went live, and everything was good as it has been. So we just took a quick moment, and I want to make sure we said to the staff, I mean, really, they are really putting an incredible amount of effort to make this as smooth a transition as possible. And then finally, if you have any questions or comments.
Congratulations on pulling this one off. It makes it's, dealing with data in different integrations is very, very difficult. I used to do this at East Bay Mud, so when we switched over to a customer information system that people could get information quickly, it was a long time coming. It took 3-4 years. So, all of these phases are correct. The question I have, because you're almost near the end of pulling the plug on the old system, and
Yes,
these are all dually being run right now.
that is correct.
Correct, okay. So, I guess the other thing is making sure that the customers, when they call in, get the best customer service. And I know we have a great team who does that. Making their lives a little easier, but make sure that the information is updated and kept that way is the most important. Question regarding the work orders.
Sure.
Now, the work orders, I know that from my own experience, when you put in work orders, it may sit there like your inbox for a long time. Is it much more easier for our service people who go out to the sites? Those are the work orders they're operating on, right?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
So that is much easier for them to use because we are, instead of having to print them out,
Right.
they do use tablets.
Or in the phone?
Or on their phone,
Okay.
or a laptop, depending upon which group, because for some staff, it's actually much easier for them to use the phone because of where they're at. But unfortunately, on the phone, they can't see as much. So it is improved over having a notebook and paper, whereas other groups use the tablets or the laptops. Again, it depends on which field and which group, and it definitely improves it in that they're able to enter the information and it's legible. And they use drop down, so we don't guess on what they did, we know what they did. And then additionally, what this iteration of the work order management, because we did have one before, but this iteration, what we put in there is a bit better in the forecasting side. So you can
Right.
see what's going on, kind of plan for in the advance, plus your break fix work orders. So they plan in the advance, leaving space in their schedule. When something breaks or happens,
Got
they're
it.
able to switch it around a little bit.
Got
And
it.
it's easier for them, plus they have now in the workflow of that, it's a little more forward and lets you know that this has been on your desk for a while.
Right.
So if you don't take care of it in a certain amount of time, it then escalates and let your supervisor or the manager know this hasn't gotten done, so they can rearrange. Because sometimes it's scheduling, somebody might have been out sick, so they have a little bit more proactive instead of reactive.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you. All right, go ahead, Pat.
I'd just like to thank you for not asking us for more money. And I'd like to congratulate you and the staff for words that are music to my ears, that's on schedule and under budget. Thank you.
On budget. I don't know if we'll be under, but we'll be on budget.
You don't want to give me money back.
All right, is there any public comment or question on information item 11?
If members of the public would like to address the board on information item number 11, please refer to the instructions on page 2 of today's agenda. President Day, it does not appear any members of the public are wishing to speak on information item number 11.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move to workshop number 12. And if anybody's listening, a site visit to the El Dorado Hills Water Treatment Plant will follow the end of today's meeting, or we'll recess today's meeting and then resume at the El Dorado Hills Water Treatment Plant. Transportation has to be, everybody provide their own. And so go ahead, Brian.
Director Day?
Yes.
I'd just like to note, I will not be able to participate in the site visit, but I was there just a few weeks ago and understand the situation, operation needs of the treatment plant, so thank you.
And for clarification, Director Dwyer did attend a site tour with Rebecca Gao from the Water Agency, as he previously reported.
All right, good morning. Brian Mueller, Director of Engineering. So this is a informational workshop, and then I guess this kind of begins the show me the money portion of today's meeting, although this is just an informational workshop to review our draft water and recycled water master plan. Previous board actions, just going back to 2013 was when our board last adopted our integrated water resources master plan. The board did review that plan back in 2021 as well. And then in February of 2022, the board approved a consulting contract with Carollo to help us prepare that, and they've done a nice job in helping us prepare this plan so far. Next slide. So as I mentioned, in summary, we're at a point where we have a draft master plan that essentially updates and renews our efforts that we did back in 2013. And the primary focus is to identify what infrastructure needs the district needs to begin planning for through the 2045 planning horizon that matches our urban water management planning. But we also, with this master plan, looked at some build-out conditions and what that infrastructure might look like way down the road. Next slide. So again, we looked at, we did some modeling with this master plan. That was a big focus of that, to look at what our system behaves at with existing demands as well as future demands, and what deficiencies and what types of infrastructure would be needed to solve those deficiencies. So we looked at both existing demands. We took the urban water management plan demands and converted that into the model to simulate the demands that the district might see in 2045 timeframe, and then also at build out. And then in summary, it also includes phasing of identified improvements that we'll get into here, and planning level cost estimates. So starting with the water supply picture, as Jim mentioned earlier today, our water supplies are abundant, and just referring back to our urban water management plan that was completed in 2020. The district has sufficient water supply to meet both existing and future demands through 2045. Some of these tables that are included that were within the plan, you can see we have about between 30 and down to 20,000, over 20,000 acre feet of extra water in either a normal or single dry year. And then we even looked in the urban water management plan at 5 consecutive years of drought, and we still had about 11,000 acre feet of additional supply to meet customer demands. The picture on the left just shows our district service area kind of broken out into colors of different areas, eastern, western, and El Dorado Hills areas. And then the graphic on the right shows what our annual demand is versus our water supplies that I just mentioned. So you can see right now for existing demands, we're around 35,000 acre feet on average of existing demands. By 2045, it's projected to rise a little bit above 40,000 acre feet. And then we also looked at build out, like I mentioned. We did consider, the conservation mandates and just lowered water use over time. So the build out estimate is right around, say, around 60,000 acre feet per year. So that's much lower than what the build-out estimate was back in 2013. I think the 2013 estimate was like 90 to 100,000 acre feet of build-out. So just reflecting just the growing trend of reduced water use. And with this chart, I just want to mention that it's not a linear chart as far as the timing from existing to 2045. You can see the kind of the slower growth rate. It's not like after 2045 our growth rate increases anymore. It's just there's just an unknown time frame between 2045 and build out, just to clarify that. Next slide. Looking at more detailed water demand analysis, this is a graph of our historical demands on a somewhat monthly time step. And just the takeaway here, you can see that back in 2013, we had pretty high demands, over 60 million gallons per day on peak summertime. With the drought, that of course was reduced a lot, but there is a continuing a slight increasing trend of water demand since then. And also note in 2021, that was the highest summer peak demand that we had seen, and it really, talking with our water operators will tell you that that really tested our system that summer of 2021, and leads into some of the transmission storage improvements that dovetailed into this master plan. Next slide. As far as water demand projections as well, we took a look at the planned developments in the area, and a lot of these, of course, are all focused on the western end of our county. Some of the most near-term demands that we're seeing right now, or building that we're seeing right now, includes the East Ridge project down off of Latrobe Road. Folsom Heights is also doing some grading. We're estimating that Marble Valley and Lime Rock, they've begun talking to us about infrastructure requirements. They're probably 5 to 10 years away as far as starting construction. But just so we took those known demands and plugged that into our future demand condition, as well as any other vacant land or known developments within the county to develop a water demand projection estimate. And so the top graph here is what that shows as far as a maximum day demand or an average day demands, both these charts. So similar to our water supplies, you can see just an increasing daily demand over time from 32 million gallons per day is our average demand today, rising up to about 35 million gallons per day by 2045, and then up to 51. With the modeling that we did with the master plan, and when we look at infrastructure, we want to look at maximum day demands, the peak summer demands. So we essentially multiplied those by 2. That's really the kind of the going rate between average day and max day demand. So looking at max day demands, those increase between 60 to 70 million gallons per day.
Brian, a question. As we just went through the cost of service study and we computed all of the facility capacity charges that we charge to new hookups and developments, for those forecasted developments like Marble Valley that are some years out, do we require the developer to install sufficient storage to mitigate the peak and, our production capability out of the treatment plants and the demand, to be a kind of a shock absorber, I guess, if you will?
Yeah, for some of the larger developments, we do. Just for example, the Marble Valley development, we've discussed with them as they develop, there would probably need additional storage built for that development, and that would be integrated. Probably, yeah.
Sorry. Got a concert going right
No problem. But yeah, for new development, every development we review the need for storage and the need for additional transmission and any improvements off-site from their, the scope of their development that would be needed, and either require that, or whether it's within our existing plan, it's included within our facility capacity charges, or there may be improvements.
Or we just demand that they
build it themselves.
build it?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that for Marble Valley, Lime Rock, the big question would be recycle or not. And if we do recycle, we really would need additional storage. There's just no way we can manage it with our current setup. So just something to pass on as we're working on that or talking to them about it.
Okay, next slide. So this slide goes over our water treatment capacity, and this is one of the things we looked at. What is our capacity of our water treatment plants compared with what demands are going to be seen over time. So the good news, when you look at our 3 major water treatment plants, we have 2 up in the eastern side, Reservoir 1 and Reservoir A, and then we have one in El Dorado Hills treating water out of Folsom Lake. That combined treatment capacity is about 90 million gallons per day. And then you can see on the chart on the left, that's enough capacity to meet our overall system demands with some excess. The problem is that we just don't have the transmission in our system to deliver that water wherever it needs to go. So the graph on the top right just looks at Reservoir 1 and Reservoir A capacity versus the demand, and you can see there's some excess capacity there well beyond 2045. But a different story in El Dorado Hills. We're nearing capacity of El Dorado Hills water treatment plants. Some we'll talk about a little bit later today down at the site. We do meet demands in El Dorado Hills by both the water treatment plant capacity out of Folsom, as well as some of the like essentially just one pipeline, the Golden Intertie, that helps supplement El Dorado Hills. So that's the way we meet demands. If we had all the pipelines that we wanted in the system, we could reduce that pumping, and we'd be able to supply the entire district with the Reservoir 1 and Reservoir A capacity as well. So this is some of the results of the hydraulic modeling that we did as part of the master plan, just to show you some of the deficiencies that are within our existing system. So this first slide simulates our existing demands. And wherever you see the pipelines kind of a thicker colored, that means that the velocities are getting pretty high in those systems. Yeah, that'd be great. I don't want to shut the meeting down. Can I give this back to you? I don't see it. Oh, there it is, okay. So this is, here is Reservoir A water treatment plant treating water out of Sly Park Lake. And you can see the Pleasant Oak main is the main transmission main leaving Reservoir A. You can see we start having some velocity and hydraulic restrictions in that pipeline going down to Reservoir 7 and into Diamond Springs all the way down to Cameron Park. I'm going to give this back because I can't see the and then on the north side of the system, the El Dorado Main 1 and 2, that also has showing signs of higher velocities, trying to get all that water from eastern down to the western area of Cameron Park. So that's the El Dorado Main 1 and 2, and eventually the Golden Intertie down to Cameron Park. Little orange and red dots indicate some pressure, areas of low pressures. Not saying that every summer or every peak demand we have low pressures at every one of these exact spots. It's a model, so there's some level of inaccuracy with everything, but it just gives you an idea of some of the areas where we could have some pressure issues. And then next slide. And then this is simulating 2045 demand, so it's a similar story, just a little bit more pronounced with the transmission main restrictions. And then you can see a little bit more popping up in El Dorado Hills area. And I think that's just more of a function. This is assuming that there's no improvements, there's no expansion of El Dorado Hills water plant, so you're starting to see some issues in El Dorado Hills and meeting demands down there. Just note on the really purple spots up there, that's the Swansboro area. We did some demand increases in Swansboro. Apparently there's a lot of vacant land up in the Swansboro area. We only have one pipeline that crosses the canyon down and up and down. So that is showing that there could be a potential problem in the future meeting demands in Swansboro if it were to build out.
Is there a possibility of, I know it's too late in the design phase now, but for the new Mosquito Bridge,
Exactly.
running a pipeline across where the bridge is, attached to the
Yeah.
bridge, to eliminate that big up and down that you talked about?
I believe we have a casing, they're reserving a casing for a future water line. There's not an actual water line being installed, but I think we'll have room in the future to build something through there if needed.
Yeah, I anticipate that with that new bridge, that there's gonna be some demand increase in the Swansboro mosquito area, because people will start subdividing their property and selling it off and building. So it could be a problematic issue down the road.
That was our thought too with the bridge, yeah. Yep.
The thought, they did the Richmond Bay Bridge to get water from the East Bay over to Marin County during the heavy drought, so it does happen.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, next slide. And then build out demand. So, again, this is with no additional infrastructure, assuming a build out demand. You can see just the situation gets where you have really big problems in Diamond Springs area, Shingle Springs, Cameron Park, and El Dorado Hills. So getting to the meat of this, what's the best plan to resolve this as demands grow over time? So we looked at three primary, call them water supply or transmission concepts. The first one that was identified in the 2013 master plan was the White Rock diversion. So the scope of this project was to essentially inject a new water supply in the middle of our district through a tap at the White Rock penstock. You'd have to pump water up out of the canyon to get it into the Placerville Ridge area. And then for a long time, there's been a planned treatment plant or a steady treatment plant called Bray Water Treatment Plant that would be located at we own property at the Bray Reservoir site. So again, a new diversion, pump station, new treatment plant that would provide a new water supply in the middle of our system. So we took a look at that again, compared with, hey, what if since we have treatment capacity within our existing 3 treatment plants with the lower demands, what would it take to just continue using our water treatment plant capacity that we have and just upgrade the transmission system? It would avoid a new treatment plant and all the costs associated with the White Rock diversion. So that's what essentially the purple line is on the south. So it would eventually be a new transmission from Reservoir A water treatment plant all the way down the county south of Highway 50 and crossing over into Cameron Park to get water from east to west into the Bass Lake area. Another dual purpose of that, we know our existing transmission mains are aging and eventually need replacement, so that also has an added benefit of while we're increasing capacity, we're replacing old transmission that we know we have issues with the Diamond Springs main showing some signs of increased failures. And then the pink area, or some of the pink lines and squares revolve around the El Dorado Hills Water Plant expansion. So whether it's White Rock or these big transmission mains, we know that's going to take a long time to eventually build. We can't do that very quickly, and we have some near-term demands that we need to meet. So the thought was to increase El Dorado Hills Water Plant capacity to 24 MGD from its existing 19.5 MGD. Build some additional transmission in the El Dorado Hills area, as well as a new pump station at our Oak Ridge tank site to pump some fulsome supplies that we have available into the Bass Lake area. And what that really does is buys us time and helps relieve some of the bottlenecks that we're seeing, during summertime demands in our transmission system. So it buys time to eventually build out the gravity transmission system.
Brian, does the Texas Hill property play into any of these alternatives?
No, it does not.
Thank you.
Good question. Yep. As far as cost, when comparing the White Rock diversion, which was identified in the 2013 plan versus the transmission upgrades, we found that the costs are similar. And here's where I start talking about really big, overwhelming dollar numbers, but the cost of the transmission upgrades, about $650 million, the White Rock diversion, about $640 million, so that's essentially a wash from a capital cost. But as I mentioned, the White Rock project, it's got additional pumping along with it. It would have additional labor of a new water treatment plant and probably some additional pumping within the water treatment plant to get it back into our system. So the White Rock project we found had just a much higher O&M cost and thus a higher NPV. So it really eliminated the White Rock diversion from future planning, and it really shifted us more into its better option to build new transmission and utilize our existing treatment facilities. Thanks. So this summarizes the extent of the proposed improvements of what this water system might look like down the road in 2045 and beyond. So starting on the left-hand side, the near-term El Dorado Hills improvements are identified. Again, the El Dorado Hills water plant, Francisco Drive water main, that's a new water main. We think we might need a new water main out of El Dorado Hills down Francisco Drive to tie into an existing water line at Green Valley Road in Silva Valley. And then the Oak Ridge pump station. So that would be kind of the initial set of projects out of this master plan that we would construct. And then on the transmission side, the purple segments, we tried to prioritize, out of all those, long length of pipelines, what's the highest priority. And so the high priority transmission segments would be more in the Diamond Springs area from our Reservoir C down to Reservoir 9, so that gets through some bottlenecks in Diamond Springs. And then a little bit farther down past Reservoir 11, there's a new pipeline that would be installed essentially within the old railway alignment, traverse through the Lime Rock and Marble Valley developments, and eventually tie into our Bass Lake area. So Director Dwyer, that's a likely pipeline where we'll be in discussions with the developer about the timing and financing of that. What else to note? Oh, and then on the northern side, the El Dorado Main 1 and 2, at build-out, this is build-out is just, if it ever happens, it showed an additional pipeline needed at build-out on the El Dorado Main 1 and 2 side of the north side. So that's the brown line shown on the northern part of our system. Slide. Okay, capital improvement costs. I haven't mentioned yet, but I think the board's aware we spent the last few years conducting condition assessments and kind of mini master plans of our water treatment facilities. So we incorporated those costs in with that and prioritized those costs. So we have priority 1 water treatment plant projects of about $91 million. And that's essentially the improvements that we have at El Dorado Hills Water Plant. The priority 2 and priority 3 projects move into the Reservoir 1 and Reservoir A water facilities. And then the $41 million for the El Dorado Hills high priority capacity upgrades, that's the Francisco Drive water main and the Oak Ridge pump station. And then you can see getting into the really big dollar cost for the Reservoir A to Bass Lake capacity upgrades. So those are the big transmission lines. And then there's a lot of other little storage upgrades that I haven't mentioned in other areas of the system that identified some needed improvements over time. So in total, the cost through 2045, about $1.2 billion. And we also added the El Dorado Main number 3, something beyond 2045 that may be needed, but again, that's so far out that we just didn't really want to include it in any planning yet, just more of a far look out of about $360 million for eventually a new El Dorado Main system. Next slide. This is the cash flow that encompasses those previous costs on the table. So I think the important thing to just note here, we've tried to limit the expenditures as much as possible within the next 5 to 10 years. So that includes the El Dorado Hills Water Plant improvements, Oak Ridge Pump Station, some of the transmission mains in the next few years there. And then beginning in the 2030s, you can see that the light blue line is, and this chart is the transmission main project. So trying to ramp up the transmission main projects in the 2030s. And it kind of times out well from our debt capacity standpoint. We have debt, when you look at our debt profile, a lot of debt drops off in the mid-2030s. And so that we're hoping that provides an avenue to be able to finance some of those large transmission projects. Next slide. Just another way of looking at this is a phasing plan. So the phase 1, 2024 to 2028, it's probably a little bit wider range than that. Addressing the priority 1 water treatment plant projects in El Dorado Hills, the transmission mains as well that I mentioned. And then you can see in phase 2 and 3, moving out towards 2045, the expenditures start ramping up with the new transmission mains to replace some of our existing. Next slide. We also looked at recycled water. It wasn't just water, but we did look at the recycled water system. I guess the summary of this, we're just projecting very limited to no additional connections of our recycled water system. Essentially, our recycled water system, we believe, is built out just with our water supply imbalance. We don't have recycled water supply to continue expanding recycled water connections that potable water supplementation will continue. So given that, we looked at the infrastructure and found that the infrastructure, the pipelines, the diameters, and the pump stations are adequate to meet current peak demands. So we're really, from the recycled water side, just looking at more of a replacement and rehab needs for the recycled water system as time goes on versus expansion. And then I think this is the final slide in summary. Based on our demand projections, based on the Urban Water Management Plan, which is a 2020 document, significant expenditures are needed, as I mentioned, by 2045. One hope, though, as far as the timing of all this, as we were developing this master plan, the county also revised their growth rates downward. In the Urban Water Management Plan, when we developed that, it was about a 1% growth rate from the county that we tried to match with our planning. The county revised that recently down to about 0.62%. So if that plays out, it would just mean that some of these improvements could be pushed out a little bit farther past 2045. But nevertheless, significant expenditures are still going to be needed, and the near-term focus right now is to proceed with the El Dorado Hills Water Treatment Plant expansion to 24 MGD, and the associated water mains, the Oak Ridge Pump Station, to help relieve some of the bottlenecks that we see every summer in our transmission system. Again, a challenging financial picture it shows, and there'll be a lot of analysis going forward, but as always, we look for different ways of doing things that might be less costly as time goes on. Continue looking for grants. And as we mentioned, you know, there may be opportunities for development to fund some of these improvements. The facility capacity charges, we are up to date, or we are underway with an update of our facility capacity charges. We're hoping to bring that to the board sometime this fall. And so that update we're working on, we're incorporating some of these projects that I mentioned here into that facility capacity charge update as well. I think that's it.
Thank you. I think it's important to make sure that the developers and development supports the cost of the upgrades that are necessary so that it doesn't go on the back of our current ratepayers. So we really need to take a hard look at that. Even the off-site improvements like the increased transmission main requirement to support new development needs to be part of that FCC cost.
Yeah, and I can tell you what we're looking at right now, we're trying to focus the FCC update on like a 10-year time frame. So, you know, what are the projects that we can feasibly do within the next 10 years? And that includes some of those transmission mains, but not all of it. If we try to do that, we're just looking too far out, and I think there's just too many variables to look that far out. So we're trying to keep it within around a 10-year analysis.
Brian, thank you very much. This is great information. There's a lot of assumptions, a lot of projections. They may come true, they may not. One thing is we looked at the water analysis prior, on the prior item. That's assuming the state doesn't try to do something with all of our water rights and our full reservoirs. So I think we just always have to be cautious. I certainly agree with Director Dwyer. New development should definitely take care of a lot of these upgrades. If not, then I don't think it should be on us as current ratepayers, especially on the eastern end when gravity was how we were all provided. And I know we're doing best to equalize as much as we can, but there was a reason why we put $50 million into a pump station out of Folsom Lake for that water down there. Now the diversion might help that in the future, so we'll see. Obviously the intertie we're going to talk about in a minute across from Sly Park over to Reze also. So a lot of good options, a lot of good information. Really appreciate all the hard work, Brian. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other board comment or question? Jim?
I just wanted to inform the board, we did share this plan with the water agency, so they're aware of it, and hopefully that will provide some guidance.
Great. Is there any public comment on this workshop item?
If members of the public would like to address the board on workshop item number 12, please refer to the instructions on page 2 of today's agenda. President Day does not appear any members of the public are wishing to speak on workshop item number 12.
And since this is a workshop, Brian, you're planning to bring this back next board meeting?
Yeah, the board usually adopts the water master plan, so I would bring it back at a future meeting to consider adoption. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Let's take a short 4-minute break. We'll come back at 10:02, give everybody a chance to go to the restroom and stretch their legs. All right, welcome back at 10:51, and we'll move to action item 13.
Good morning, Tom Money, chairman of the district. This morning to discuss the construction contract with project funding for water treatment plant generator.
John, can I encourage you to keep it going forward? No, not that I wasn't speaking out, but because we do have the tour later on, and it is getting hotter out there.
Okay.
So the sooner we get out there, that'd be great.
Got it. So again, the board did award a Sourcewell contract back in October 23rd for the purchase of a generator for the site. That generator actually just showed up last week and has been temporarily installed in the site. And then this project was on the last approved CIP. So a couple of summary of issues. So again, in August of last year, the Res 1 water treatment plant generator failed catastrophically and was not repairable. Again, a new generator has been purchased. We facilitated the purchase of that generator because a rental generator out there is $1,700 a month, or about 20 grand a year. So we're trying to facilitate getting that rental off-site and a new generator placed. This contract will complete the installation of that permanent generator, so it's going to be there on a temporary, well, not temporary, but it's a temporary install into the existing equipment. This will remove that and get it permanently in place for the future. So again, just one note of point, the Res 1 site is out of service a couple months out of the year. We usually take that down for maintenance. However, we do need power at that site at all times. It's a backup hub for our SCADA system. And so that's one of the reasons why this generator is a critical facility for the district. To facilitate this whole process, an on-call RFP was issued to Herwood Engineering for the design of this location. They've since completed that, and we've bid and are moving forward with the project. So the scope of the work will be to demolish the existing fuel tank, generator, parts of the generator foundation, and removal of the existing automatic transfer switch out of the existing control building, replacement of the foundation, some rework of the duct banks and conduit between the generator and building, and the installation of a new ATS and any other pertinences for the new facility. Last, full integration of the new generator into the district SCADA system, and then start up and testing of the generator. Just for reference, that is the existing generator. You can tell by the age. One of our old mechanics said that it looked like it came off of an old naval ship. So again, I think it's about 30 years in age, and you can kind of tell by just looking at it. So this project was issued for bid. We had actually some pretty tight bids on this project. Bids were due in May, and the engineer's estimate was between $750,000 and $800,000. So low bid was Telstar Instruments at $828,000. Telstar has done work for the district. They were the integrators for the Deer Creek PLC replacement program, which was successful here about a year ago, or 2 years ago
The project is in an existing site and is exempt from, or staff has reviewed and is exempt from CEQA. Next slide. For schedule for the project, again, the generator was delivered last Thursday, and staff is working to do a temporary install so that we do have power and we can get that rental off-site. We anticipate construction will begin in July if this item is approved. Kind of the time limiting factor on this is that it does require a new ATS to be manufactured and delivered as part of the project. That won't happen until sometime in November of this year, which pushes construction out till likely January of this year. So today we're asking for a construction contract for Telstar Instruments for $828,300. We are asking to issue a contract extension for Herwood Engineering for construction engineering services in the amount of $80,000, capitalized labor for $63,000, and a project contingency of $97,213 for a total funding request of $1,069,345,000. Board options. Staff is recommending option 1, award a contract to Telstar Instruments in the not to exceed amount of $828,300 for construction, and authorize additional funding of $80,832 for construction engineering services, $63,000 for capitalized labor, and $97,213 in contingencies for a total funding request of $1,069,345 for the Reservoir 1 water treatment plant generator replacement project. Staff recommends option 1.
I'll move option 1.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Do we have any other comments or questions from the board?
All I can tell you is in the last month, our power has gone out 3 times in Camino. One of which was a drunk driver hit a pole, but that was, but for other reasons, the trees going through, even with the clearing from PG&E from the power lines, we're still getting trees going through, during high wind events.
Yeah, that's a single circuit all the way from right around the district headquarters building all the way up past Mormon Negrete Trail. So I think that's the largest single circuit in PG&E's service area. So it is, again, problematic, and again, another reason why the generator is a critical facility there.
Yeah. All right, is there any public comment on action item 13?
If members of the public would like to address the board on action item number 13, option 1 moved by Director Dwyer and seconded by Director Veerkamp, please refer to the instructions on page 2 of today's agenda. President Day, it does not appear that there are any members of the public wishing to speak on action item number 13. I believe we're ready for the vote.
Please vote.
Division 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, voting aye. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, and here comes the scary one. Item number 14.
Scary, hopefully you don't mean me, but
That's the item, not you.
Yes.
there we go. All righty, well, save the best for last. Good morning, members of the board. My name is Liz Carrington, Senior Civil Engineer here at the district. Today, I will be presenting the infamous construction contract and project funding for the Sly Park Intertie Improvements Project. And quick note before I begin, there are just a few minor modifications to this PowerPoint, so just to help bolster the background for this project. Great, next slide. Staff has been to the board a handful of times, initially for a grant application to apply for a $10 million drought resiliency grant. Also a handful of times for design, next slide. A few design amendments to support the continual effort of this project. Next slide. Sorry, back one. And I did want to mention too, just recently, April of this year, board adopted a resolution declaring the intent to secure bond funding for this project and a couple others. Next slide. Summary of issues. Slide Park Intertie is a critical component to drinking water reliability for our customers. The original SBI was decommissioned in 2013 due to its failing condition, multiple leaks and whatnot. The replacement SBI and associated pump station will enable the district to more effectively access both water sources, Jenkinson Lake and South Fork American River water supplies for delivery throughout our service area. Next slide. Background. Alrighty, SBI was originally constructed to alleviate water shortages during the 1976 and 1977 drought. Subsequent years later, emergency water pump station was constructed at Res A in response to the Cleveland fire to pump water from Res A to Res 1 when we had the canal outage. In total, SBI consists of 6 miles of non-standard pipe with no interior lining to convey raw water, not finished drinking water. Substantial leaks and pipe failures required removal from service about 10 years ago. Next slide. The overall objective of this project is to reconstruct the SBI pipeline and its pump station to allow for bidirectional flow of finished drinking water between Res 1 and Res A. Res 1 and Res A jointly provide about 70% of the district's water supply, and this can provide drinking water throughout the entire district, from Pollock Pines all the way down to El Dorado Hills. Next slide. All right, I did want to take a moment to show a few graphical representations of the benefits of this project. SBI being situated on the most eastern boundary of our service area, it allows for the maximum flexibility as acting as an intertie for our 2 systems. Next slide. So engineering worked with operations staff to work on the what-if scenarios. This is really important when we're devising what our project priorities are and how we're going to build a project. So the first scenario, if you will, is if we have an outage, an unplanned substantial outage at Res A. The red X's mark Res A being out as well as SBI not being in place. So if that's the case, we would rely on water supplies at our Res 1 water treatment plant. We would convey water down through the Highway 49 intertie, as well as the leg A of the Gold Hill intertie. And the gray represents partial water available to our customers for the Res 12, Res 11, and Res 9 area. And the black indicates minimal, if any, water that could be supplied to our customers in that area. Next slide. So if we move forward with this project and we do have an outage at Res A, we'll convey water the same way, but we'll also use the Slide Park intertie. So we'll be able to supply water to all of our district customers. Granted, in peak demand, we might not be able to do 100% capacity, but our customers will remain in water. Next slide. All right, scenario number 2. Res 1 is offline and SBI is no longer there, is not operational. We would flow water back up through the Moose Hall Reservoir and Moose Hall Pump Station and provide water to our customers up through Pollock Pines. Unfortunately, this would only be a partial water delivery to those customers. Next slide. With SBI, we'll be able to, again, continue to provide water to our customers throughout that outage. Next slide. So if this project is approved today, the SBI operation will be dependent on several factors. Operational needs, drought, if that occurs, variances in water yield between the 2 sources, the South Fork American River and the Consumnes watersheds. Say if we have planned plant upgrades, we have seasonal maintenance and emergency outages. And just a quick note as well, normal operation of the SBI, we would serve Slide Park Hills through the SBI and reduce our energy costs at Res A. Next slide. The overall objectives of this project are first and foremost operational resiliency, also drought resiliency, better management of disinfection byproducts, so DBPs, and our ability to service and perform repairs on just Reservoir A in general, the Slide Park Dam Control House, the 48-inch conduit from Slide Park Dam to Res A, the downstream 36-inch Camino conduit, and it really gives ourselves the ability to address all these equipment repairs that were identified in the water treatment plan assessment just completed a few years ago. Next slide. So as far as the project scope of work, we've divided it into 4 main segments. The first segment is Pony Express through Ridgeway Drive. Segment number 2 is close to 5 miles cross-country. Segment 3 is about 0.2 miles. That's within the Reservoir A compound as well as the new pump station. And then segment 4 is the 0.4 miles of 12-inch slip lining from Res A to Sly Park Hills tank. Okay, next slide. I included this slide. I thought it was just an excellent representation of the obstacles that our contractor will be challenged with during the course of construction. Unfortunately, this isn't just a valley flatland pipeline project. We have 4 creek crossings, hills and valleys. This is very steep and vegetated terrain. This requires specialized equipment and quite a few logistical challenges as we construct the project. Next slide.
Actually,
Yes.
Liz, if you go back to that one, because, to the topo, yeah, this one is what scares the heck out of me, because it is so rugged, and I'm concerned, what are we doing to prepare ourselves for probable cost overruns, encountering things that you couldn't see from aerial, surveys and that sort of stuff?
Yeah, I can speak to that. So we had an initial mandatory job walk at Reservoir A, and then we had 2 optional job walks, which were attended by both contractors, where we accessed 5 or 6 points along the pipeline and walked upstream and downstream. So we did our best to just try to get eyes on the ground. That was 2 full days of stomping around in the woods, of showing our contractors kind of what they'll be facing when they're bidding the project. So, next slide.
Well, this construction company is not one of the normal ones that we've dealt with in the past. And I'm not questioning their capabilities, but I've just, backing up what Director Day has talked about, we had significant cost overruns in our building the Forebay Dam, and I don't want to see that again. And just double checking that this is a responsible, and you've done background checks and all of this stuff, the appropriate things to do with this construction company.
Yes, absolutely. So moving forward, I might discuss a little bit more, but I did go back and check all of their references, and all of them provided a favorable review. Also, during conversations during the initial job walk, as it seems that this type of project is completely in their wheelhouse of not only the welded steel pipe, the larger diameter, but also the hilly and rugged terrain. So, it really wasn't the pipeline that was the concern. It was more of just access and the ability to actually construct this pipeline. And so it appears as though the contractor that I intend to propose for award today is well qualified to do this job.
Okay, the ball's in your court.
And George,
Got it.
and George, there's a member of the contracting firm here. Later on, maybe if he wants to speak, he can do that.
Yeah, and he can guarantee us no surprises.
Well, we have an aversion to additional contract requests, you might say, because now if it's our fault, we accept it, but we expect the bid to come in pretty damn close to what it is, okay?
Thank you. All right, also part of the project, we have a 2-story pump house. This will be at Reservoir A. This consists of 3 700 horsepower vertical turbine pumps, 3 500 kilowatt generators, electrical upgrades, motor actuated valves, and flow meters on the Camino conduit and POM. So this will be quite an impressive facility once it's constructed. Next slide. Okay. Again, to speak to kind of how we bid this project, RFQs were released in November. RFQs were released in November and February of this year. When we initially flew the RFQ, we received qualifications packages from 6 contractors, and only 2 were deemed qualified. And so we thought we'd like to get a little bit more interest for the project. So we reissued that RFQ back in February, and the outcome of that was that 3 contractors were qualified. Bids were due just recently, May 28th of this year, and the engineer's estimate ranged between 35 and 38 million. So, our bids vary quite a bit. I'll admit that. So, I did take the bid. We talked to our construction engineering support folks, and it does seem like Mazingo's pipeline cost averages about $3.5 million per mile, which is very consistent with our recent larger pipeline projects, such as Mother Lode Force Main and Main Ditch Pipeline. The pump station at Res A was higher, but it was higher on both bids. So we feel that that's reasonable because they're both similar. We did include an optional item for fiber communication along the pipeline. That's because the pump station, you'll need very close communication between the Reservoir 1 water storage facility and the Reservoir A, just for the timing of that pump station. And so staff feels that if we proceed with that optional bid item of fiber, we'll have a guaranteed communication link in between the two. Next slide. So following up on that discussion between myself and the construction engineering support folks, we do feel that there are several factors that impacted the bid price. One is limited number of qualified bidders. There's just not many folks out there that does this type of work. Perceived risk associated with the stream crossings. We have 4 stream crossings, a slew of permits and a slew of requirements, so that adds an element of complexity. We have steep terrain. There's some terrain that you're going to need, definitely some interesting modes of construction to get those constructed. So I think just having the specialized equipment out there in order to traverse those terrains is going to be challenging. Also, easement access limitations. So we do have all the necessary easements for this project. There are a few optional ones that we couldn't quite get, and so there are a few bottlenecks in our windows of construction. Also, excavation and site constraints at Res A. Res A is a very small site. It's going to be snug. Also, ongoing electrical and mechanical price volatility. There's lots of questions about the pumps and the generators and all the electrical equipment, and so we feel that those bid prices kind of fold in all of those risks as well. And lastly, the schedule constraints required by the grant funding. So that grant funding, it's $10 million. We'll need to get it done by January 31st, 2026. And so there's those 3 things with project management. You can have good quality, you can have on time and under budget. And so I think when you have that speeding up the time element, it impacts the price. And I did want to note, I did talk to our proposed construction management firm and talked about, if there's any value engineering modifications, we can make it Res A. And, that's definitely something we plan on looking at to see if we can kind of fine tooth it once we move forward, if we do. So, next slide. Staff is also seeking contracts to support the project itself. Construction engineering services with Waterworks. That's about 3% of construction costs, very similar, or actually on the low end of what we typically like to see for construction engineering services. Also a contract for construction management and inspection. So staff released an RFP in February of this year. We received 3 proposals, and staff feels that ICM Group proposed the best value to the district. And also right now, ICM is supporting the district with the Mother Lode Force Main project, so we feel confident in their abilities to assist with this project. Next slide. Environmental review. The board certified the project's final EIR back in April of this year. We had a handful of federal and state agencies that we coordinated with, and all permits have been secured. Staff solicited a on-call RFP for biological and water quality monitoring that's required for the permits. Staff is recommending that we award to Stantec Consulting Services. They are not quite the lowest, but we did look at the average hourly rate, and we feel that it is the lowest average hourly rate, and they have a really good understanding of the project and a reasonable estimate for the amount of hours that it's going to take to complete the project. Next slide. Overall schedule, we'd like to hit the ground running. As soon as we have the results of this meeting, we'd start in July of this year. Per the contract documents, the Sly Park Intertie Pipeline and Pump Station will be operational by the end of this year. Substantial completion will follow a year later, and that's just if we have delays with generator procurement or certain pieces of the project that have some waiting times. We might be able to operate the pipeline or pump station in hand while we're waiting for a few pieces and components. So, and then final completion in January of 2027. All right. So I added this slide because, quite frankly, we got the bids, and we're a little bit surprised. And so I wanted to acknowledge the question that might be in your mind or anyone else's mind of, since the district has been without the old SBI since 2013, can the district continue reliable service without the new SBI? Kind of the, what if we do nothing? Next slide. So at the staff level, we investigated this question very thoroughly. Engineering worked with operations to really look at, what's our why for this project. So the objectives are also our risks. That we have to make a risk decision of whether we move forward or not. Those factors, again, are the objectives of the 70-year-old Slide Park Dam Control House, the 40-inch diameter conduit that conveys raw water to Reservoir A water treatment plant itself, and the 36-inch Camino conduit. All of these risk factors represent about 56 million gallons per day of treatment and delivery capacity. All of these risk factors are single points of failure. If they go down, that's it. And the district is unique in its infrastructure and lack of redundancy. I say that in comparison to maybe more urban water districts where they have a lot more dense infrastructure, things are more interconnected and looped, and we're just too spread out. We're spread out, our elevation varies quite a bit, and so we just don't have that luxury. Next slide. Speaking of Res 1 and Project 184 specifically, Res 1 service area will continue to be a risk during future canal or plant outages. System demands cannot be met if Res 1 has an outage during the summer months. We skirted by very close during Caldor Fire. Future outages related to wildfire, landslides will be a continual risk to water supply reliability. I mean, yes, there is, FEMA public assistance grants and whatnot, but that really doesn't negate the fact that we still need to deliver water to our customers. Next slide. And now I did want to talk about planned activities as well. Currently, as we stand, we have short windows for maintenance, resulting in higher costs and higher risk. One example of that was the Reservoir A filter project, unfortunately. Right now, we have a limited scope of improvement projects that we can actually get done. And we've had deferment of previously identified equipment replacements. Just to name a few, it's raw water influent piping, raw water flow meter replacement, backwash return piping, filter effluent, isolation valves and actuators, and rehabilitation of the filter to waste effluent piping and valves. These are all projects that I know, working with our operations partners, we're trying very hard to get those projects done. Just got to inch by one way at a time, and SBI is the first piece to that puzzle to get those projects done. Next slide. So in summary, answering that question, since the district has been without the old SBI, can we continue reliable service without it? And staff believes the answer is no. Next slide. Alrighty, on to a lighter topic. We've already been doing quite a bit of outreach with the environmental impact report effort. We have a project website that's already stood up. We have a project email list, or project email address that we've already been responding to folks with. So we'll just continue to keep those up to date and keep moving forward. Next slide. Funding, let's see. Here's the ask. All right, construction for Mazingo Construction for $45,680,000. Construction engineering services to Waterworks for $1,344,938. Construction management inspection to ICM Group for $2,463,941. Biological and water quality monitoring performed by Stantec for $97,626.54. CDFW compensatory mitigation, staff is estimating around $50,000 for that. Caltrans and El Dorado County Department of Transportation fees, that's for the Ridgeway Drive and Pony Express portions of work. We're estimating those fees to be about $50,000. Stormwater pollution prevention plan monitoring, also estimated at $50,000. Capitalized labor for overall project management and engineering, $600,000, which is pretty in line with the Folsom intake project. Contingency of $5,033,650.55 for a total funding request of $55,370,156.09. And I did add that little line about the grant funding, and so we are anticipating a $10 million reimbursement at the beginning of this project.
I have a question on that.
Yes.
Because you earlier said that the deadline on it is short?
Oh, yes. So I've been working with our grant agencies.
Is this the same grant you're talking about?
Yes, absolutely. So I had some earlier conversations to say, hey, we're looking at the schedule, we might see some impacts. And so the grant agency representative had said, your scope of work is to have SBI pipeline and pump station operational. And so that's why in those contract documents, we have that earlier milestone of December 31st of 2026. So the whole project doesn't have to be done. It's just, are we meeting the scope of the grant to get that reimbursement? And so we'll start reimbursements right away. We'll get $9 million, and then they hold a 10% retention of when the grant's scope of work is complete. And so that's why you see those earlier milestones.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Next slide. All right, here we go. Board options. Option 1, award contracts to Mazingo Construction, Inc. in the not-to-exceed amount of $45,680,000 for construction. Waterworks Engineers, Inc. in the not-to-exceed amount of $1,344,938 for construction engineering services. ICM Group, Inc. in the not-to-exceed amount of $2,463,941 for construction management and inspection services. And Stantec Consulting Services in the not-to-exceed amount of $97,626.54 for biological and water quality monitoring, and authorize additional funding of $50,000 for environmental compensatory mitigation, $50,000 for Caltrans and El Dorado County Department of Transportation fees, $50,000 for stormwater pollution prevention plan monitoring, $600,000 for capitalized labor, and $5,033,650.55 in contingencies, for a total funding request of $55,370,156.09 for the Sly Park Intertie Improvements Project. Staff's recommendation is option 1. Any questions?
Do we have a question?
One of the reasons I voted for the increases in our rates was because of this project. It is absolutely imperative that we do this, because if we lose the flume, we've got 6 days of water supply out of Forebay, and that's it. And during the summer, during high ag usage and everything else, we need to have this backup. I move 1.
I have a motion. Do I hear a second?
A second.
I think Director Veerkamp beat you.
Sorry, Brad.
So we have a motion and a second. Any other questions? Jim, you had something?
Just wanted, I think Liz mentioned it in the beginning, by awarding, if the board decides to award this contract, the bond financing to help pay for that's coming up in August. So we'll also need bond approval to help pay for this project. I like to have it a little closer, but because the $10 million grant is out there hanging, and I don't want to lose that, and it has to be done by December 2000.
January 31st, 2026.
If we delayed this until after the bond, trying to get it complete and be in compliance with the grant deadline would be problematic. So I just want to make sure the board's fully aware of that.
So just to put this on, thank you very much. It's in consideration of the slideshow. Somewhere in there, if you could update it to us, because my slides were like 5 slides off, and you had things up there that I was trying to find, and I know you said that earlier. So I just want to make sure that the stuff that's given to me is correct.
Yeah, absolutely,
you.
will do.
If the board likes to, we'll just send out the PowerPoint to all board members.
Thank you. And the last one too, that we had a problem with.
Right. Is there any public comment or question on action item 14? All right, don't see anybody. Do we see anybody online raising their hand?
If members of the public would like to address the board on action item number 14, option 1, moved by Director Osborne and seconded by Director Veerkamp, please refer to page 2 of today's agenda.
All right.
Did I say that right?
Yes.
President Day. Does not appear there are any members of the public wishing to speak on action item number 14. I believe we're ready for the vote.
All right, please vote. Liz, what's the elevation average for that area you're working in?
Oh, gosh, I think it's about 25, what was that? 3,000?
Probably
25,
3,000.
Oh, so it's prime poison oak territory, in other words.
About 3,000, yes, absolutely.
So buy some cases of Tecnu.
Mountain Misery, more likely.
I think that's a better idea.
All right, did we call the vote? There we go. All right.
Division 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, voting aye, motion carries unanimously.
All right,
Get her done.
get cracking. All right, now we'll move to our last, sort of last item. Item 15, we got to pay our bills and our warrant register.
Move one.
We'll give that one to Pat. That was
President
close.
Day.
That was close, but he's been trying.
Yeah, I'll be recusing myself from this item.
All right, and Director Verkamp will be recusing himself. Is there any public comment on action item 15?
If members of the public would like to address the board on action item number 15, option 1, moved by Director Osborne and seconded by Director Ancini, please refer to the detailed instructions on page 2 of today's agenda. President Day, it does not appear any members of the public are wishing to speak on action item number 15. I believe we're ready for the vote.
Please vote.
Division 1, 2, 4, and 5, voting aye, with Director Verkamp recusing himself. Motion carries.
All right, now we'll be recessing and then reconvening at the El Dorado Hills Water Treatment Plant. It's about 11:30 right now. Do we want to shoot a target time to give people a chance to, how long do we think the tour will take, Jim?
Brian and Dan worked to set it up. My guess is half hour.
Yeah, so I was gonna say about 30 minutes, maybe a little bit longer.
All right, let's maybe try to shoot there to, everybody try to be there about 12:15. Gives you time to hit the restroom, maybe grab a bite.
So just for the public's benefit, the board will not reconvene at the El Dorado Hills Water Treatment Plant until 12:15.
Correct.
Perhaps after,
Or
but not
later.
earlier.
Yes.
Director Day, will you recess the meeting? At 11:28 a.m.